start already?
Oh, we did.
Really?
I guess we did. Hi, Zach.
Is it recording?
I guess you're doing the intro.
Oh, I panicked.
What's my name?
We believe in you.
What show is this?
I was gonna say the only time I think I've ever actually done a good intro was the one time where I think both of you guys were like debating who was gonna do it, and then I was just like, "Welcome to another episode of Pop." Yep. See,
Yeah.
like, I can't even do it now.
All right,
Because I
everyone,
panicked.
let's let him do it. You almost got there.
I almost did. Okay.
Center yourself.
You can do this. Welcome to another exciting episode of Pop Culture Unboxing.
Good job.
Yeah.
Nice.
Hooray.
Thanks. And who are you?
I'm Zach. Who are you?
I'm Matt. Who are you?
I'm Don, or Matt's dad.
Yes, again, back again.
Back again.
Yeah. And we also have
A new guest.
Cole, and I want Matt to describe my relationship to him.
He is my sister's boyfriend.
I'm really disappointed in you. I knew that was coming, but I should
the
be
literal-
so much more to you than that.
You are. You're a good friend, but that is the literal relation.
But
You
not
In
did
the
so
most
ask for that.
understandable terms.
We
got a
watched
point.
The Expanse in 4 days.
Yes, we did. We have a very special friendship, but not quite as special as you and my sister.
Yeah, it's a little different.
It is very different, and I appreciate that. It's like
Yeah, me too.
to bring it to what we're going to be talking about today, it's like that scene in Captain America where he leans down and kisses Peggy in the car, and then he looks down at Tommy Lee Jones.
Yes, and he says, "Don't look at me. I'm not going to kiss you."
Tommy Lee Jones' response. Yeah, guys, welcome to Pop Culture Unboxing.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I was talking more to the audience because I'm going to say that, as you can tell, Ryan is, again, not here with us.
I'm Ryan,
sadly
Yes, he's the
Nice to meet you, Ryan.
He's
Ryan
proto
2.0.
Ryan.
but he's listening. Ryan, shout out.
Probably. I don't know. I don't
hope
think he
so.
listened to the last one.
He better.
Yeah, or else.
Does he not
sh-
support our own podcast?
I don't think he does.
Wow.
Oh, that's sad.
He's
It
only
is
here.
sad.
He's here for the fame, and that's it.
Can't believe you, Ryan.
Yeah, he should be back next week.
All
I
right,
listened to the episodes when I went fishing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm such a good fan. I'm still listening to the episodes.
yeah, he is. He listens to it more than we do.
I was gonna say that sounded like you guys are terrible, but I'm still gonna do it.
I think
because I care.
just by nature of me editing, I think I listen to it more than you and Ryan do, Zach.
Oh yeah, because you have to go through them all
Yeah.
again.
all right. So I have to start off here
Okay.
by apologizing to all of the audience who have English degrees or are currently English majors and would recognize my faux pas last podcast where I mistakenly said I was listening to or I was reading a book by a George Herbert. Well, I got confused because we were talking about Frank Herbert, who wrote the Dune series, but it's George Eliot who I'm reading. And she was in 19th century
19th century is the 1800s.
British author, and I'm in the middle of reading Middlemarch, which is pretty much her main book. And anyway, so I apologize for all of you. Don't send in letters. Don't send nasty emails. No flames. I've apologized.
People listen to the show, and that's the grievance they have with it.
They might,
They
you
say
don't
you've
know.
got the author's
I
name.
already sent in the death threats.
yeah,
all right.
see? How dare you malign George Eliot?
Exactly.
I mean, hey, listen, even death threats are feedback.
True.
Like, if we get one of those, I'll probably frame it.
True.
I don't
I
know if
wouldn't do
that's
that.
the right way to break that down.
After you send it to the police.
It's a pretty lukewarm take.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
Hey, no, what is
So
it?
what do we want to start with? We never really defined that. Should we start with the more minor one, the trailer we watched earlier?
We could.
So we all watched a trailer earlier for a movie that is coming to, I believe it's at HBO Max.
Is it,
Yeah,
well,
it's
and they
HBO
didn't
Max.
clarify
Fine.
whether it was a movie or a series.
It's a movie.
It's a movie.
Okay.
Based on
Yeah.
a short story.
I think
Okay.
it was Amazon Prime, wasn't it? Because it had the little
No,
Prime in
HBO
the
Max.
It
corner.
was HBO Max.
We were talking about something different.
No, we're talking about
We're talking about An American Pickle.
Okay.
the one,
Oh, okay.
the one with two
Never
Seth
mind.
Rogans.
Never mind.
I know.
I'm
me
looking
and
at something else.
him are thinking Fallout. And
Oh,
you're
yeah.
talking American Pickle.
We'll probably talk more about the Fallout, and we'll probably know a little bit more about it next week. But
Mm-hmm.
the Westworld writers are making a Fallout series, which should be interesting for Amazon Prime, but probably won't see that for a while.
Okay, so just to clarify for our audio listeners,
Sorry.
just
You
to
can
clarify
play it.
for
Turn off the
our,
audio first.
For our audio listeners, we are talking about American Pickle now.
Yes, with Seth Rogen.
You want it off?
Yeah, turn it off because if you have it on at all, it'll get picked up by the mics. But yeah, so yeah, HBO Max about an old Jewish man from Schlupsk, I think is the
Schlup.
yeah, I got it right.
Yes.
Schlupsk,
Wow.
Poland, I think.
Just Eastern Europe.
or
is
somewhere in
undefined.
Eastern Europe, who goes to America to pursue the American dream, and then falls into a vat of pickle brine and pickles himself for 100 years, and wakes up in the modern day, where he meets his great grandson, who is trying to work at a tech startup. I think.
They didn't say in the.
Yeah, I think in the short story that's what he is.
I do enjoy that. Like it's clearly a comedy, but I do think that it's one of those things where I think they may actually have a really good story, because it's going to be really cool to see how they try to depict like how someone 100 years ago is going to react to today's world.
Yeah,
in a funny way.
To me, it seems like it would be similar to like a serious Adam Sandler movie, relatively speaking.
it
Like
does
they-
definitely. They are going for artsy here, I think, more than anything else. And from what I've heard, the tone of this is different than the short story, where the short story almost exclusively played his 100-year-old, slightly backwards view of the world, totally for laughs, and that's it. Whereas it seems like it's gonna be more a heartfelt thing. Both of them trying to connect with each other despite the generational gap and his lack of knowledge of what's happened in the last 100 years.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's actually kind of cool, and I actually want to see what they do with it, because sometimes Hollywood, like, sometimes they'll come up with something. I'm like, holy crap! I think you actually did something good. But one of the things that the guy does, like, he looks at his grandson and he's like, you lost your parents. How are you making it without God?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, it's one of those things where he's coming from a different time, and he's like, this is how we grieved, and you're clearly not handling it well.
Right.
And I'm handling it and you're not. So maybe you should listen to what I have to say.
Yeah.
Well,
No, go ahead.
the other thing is like it's such a limited scope. Like you have no idea which direction they could go with it, because I know there are a lot of religious people now where that's part of their justification to non-religious people is like, well, how do you do this? And then so it could be that like he's just handling it well and he has his own way of doing it, and that's like the modern disconnect, or it could just be that he's just like not handling it well, and that's the way that they come about.
Well,
it,
what I could see them doing is the idea that part of what back then you dealt with it was by talking to your family about it, whereas now a lot of it is you handle it by bottling it up. You don't tell people about it. You deal with it by yourself, but it eats you up. Because he even does it in the trailer. He's like, "Tell me all about it," and it seems the
Bond
way it's
through our
worded, it's
pain.
played for
Yeah.
laughs, but he's looking for a connection there.
Yeah, if they do it right, it could be really cool, because I think that's one of those things that comedy can do really well, is it can take a serious subject and actually make a really good point, but it only works if they're just telling a story. Like if they're trying to tell you a certain point, like if it's very obvious, this is what we're trying to tell you, it's gonna suck.
Right.
But if they
Yeah.
tell a story and there's a point behind it, it's gonna be good. And that's one of those things where I'm kind of looking at it and I'm like, this actually could be a really good movie.
And I could also see them going kind of the route of it seems like the son or the grandson is trying to make his way in the tech world and make it big and be the next big app maker, whereas his great grandfather is like, let's start making pickles. He wants to go do a simple job. And so I see what this movie could also try to do is say, like, it's not wrong. Like, you don't have to go and be the next big Steve Jobs or something. You can just go do something simple.
there's a
You
very
don't have to change the world.
There's a very obvious perspective difference, even from like the very first 3 lines. And she's like, I want to be so wealthy, like own your own or pay for your own gravestone wealthy. And so like, so obviously like somebody that was dropped from that perspective into the modern world, he could work at a pizza shop and probably afford that. And so there's going to be an obvious kind of, like a differing perspective, even like that we have between like some people say like the US and other European countries, where they're like, we're living to live and we work to live, where some people here, they work for more, to work in better conditions, whatever it is. But there's just like the obvious differing perspective of it.
Yeah, I think because like right at the beginning they make his part is that he's a ditch digger over in Europe, and he's like, I want to move to America and be a pickler, and it's like, to him that's the dream.
Right.
Yeah.
It's I want to go somewhere else where there's more opportunity, because all I can do here is dig ditches, but over there I can do something else, and it's nothing huge and glorious, kind of like what you were saying. And I think that's what I think it's going to be. It has all the potential to be really good.
And that's the crux of the thing. It has a lot of potential.
Yes.
And we've seen especially Seth Rogen squander that kind of storytelling potential to do some weed jokes.
Oh, you know, there's going to be some kind of pot joke
absolutely.
where he's going to be like, "Hey, have you ever done this?" And then,
Yeah, and if it's just a one-off scene, fine, whatever. That's a huge part of Seth Rogen and the characters he plays. But there's so many good stories they could tell here, and even from this trailer, it's trying to be something more than just, oh, this guy's from 100 years ago. Look what he thinks of this world. Ha ha ha.
Right.
Yeah.
It's going to try to do more than that.
But
I
even
think.
what they were showing in the trailer, at least maybe it's the only part of the movie is what they put in the trailer, is him looking at the situations and saying, well, why would you do that? You know, because it is, you know, like he even said, you have no friends, you have nobody, but yet you're happy, you know? And so and it's kind of like, you know, where he's bringing that back and saying, no, maybe you need to have friends. Maybe you need to look at that side, kind of what you guys are saying about the being the tech guru and all that isn't the answer. But it's true that our culture plays that's the pinnacle. So if I want to, I don't know, say make candy for a living. Oh, you're just making candy. Oh, you're pathetic. You know, I'm a stockbroker. You know, and it's like, no, if that's what you want to do and you're able to afford it, and you know, nobody has jets, and well, Kenneth Copeland does, but nobody had, but you know, that's not, it's not, I don't know that you'd really want it once you had that, you know, I mean, you want a comfortable life, you want to be able to, you know, like I say, I just want to have the capability to make decisions, you know, and
whereas everyone else, it's a much faster, more modern keeping up with the Joneses thing, where the Joneses are everybody else.
Right.
Not just the handful of people around you.
No, now it's everybody on Facebook. It's everybody on Twittergram. What are the things you do?
Something like that.
Instagram, all the influencers that'll rent out a plane and sit it somewhere for one day to have as little cost as possible, and they'll take hundreds and hundreds of pictures to supply their like influencer status for the next year.
Yep. They'll go to the beach with like 50 different swimsuits so that they can get enough pictures to last them, make it look like they go to the beach every weekend.
Yeah, and you know, I do think it's actually really interesting what you were saying about I'm just going to launch into it, and then maybe you'll figure out exactly what I was thinking. But if you look at like what both Don and Matt are saying, is that one's looking to be the next Zuckerberg and the other's looking to like survive comfortably.
Right.
And those are two wildly different perspectives. And like in today's world, it is about getting the phone and getting the cool TV and getting the cool car and the influencers having all these material things. And back then it was, I want to work so that I can live comfortably enough so that I don't have to worry about my family being fed.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, it's a completely different perspective. And now we're like, well, if I'm not making $1 million by the time I'm 25, I'm a failure.
But then if you're making $1 million by the time you're 25, you're not making $200 million by the time you're 30.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the next thing.
Yeah. And that's definitely, I do like all these different, like, and that's kind of what I think I've been getting at. Is like it's one of those things, like it has all the pieces of the Mona Lisa. Let's just hope they put it together correctly.
Well, what we're
Unlike
either
The
going to walk
Last of
away
Us
from
2.
here is saying that, oh yeah, Seth Rogen does have the chops to make a good movie, or we have the chops to make a better movie than Seth Rogen. It's going to be one of those two things. Is that we've sat here and come up with a very good story. We'll see if he does it.
Yeah, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not thinking it's going to be good.
Yeah,
I'm not a big Seth Rogen fan, and so I'm just not expecting.
And that's the thing that makes me nervous is there's so little risk for him. You know, people will be like, "Oh, you took it too seriously. It's a Seth Rogen movie. What'd you expect?"
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
comedy.
But you know, if he does deliver, then it's like he's this next caliber actor that everyone has been underestimating.
But from what I've seen, I think he in particular is kind of trying to grow out of that, the Sausage Party and the Pineapple Express and all of those movies. He's trying to move past that. I think he's more like the Disaster Artist was I think was their first big attempt at it, of trying to make more serious movies. That they can never really get away from comedy because that group has always done. Mm-hmm. But I think they want to do more serious,
like Green
movies.
Lantern.
Something like that. Yeah, I think that's the next logical step there.
Yeah, I do think that that's something that's like a natural progression with especially with comedians, is they're out there making their jokes and having their fun, and then as they get older and they start to change their perspective a little bit, they're like, okay, well, I also want to leave something important too.
Right.
Like I know that laughter is important, but I also want to leave a message that's not just.
But you can do both.
laughs.
And
Yeah,
but you're
exactly.
right. But if you go for the cheap, fart jokes and pot jokes and all of that, okay, then you're pathetic. Then you're no different than the schlubs that can't get a movie deal, that are still doing stand up, still saying the stupid jokes, but that's not creative. That's just weak.
Yeah, it's like I think Robin Williams did a phenomenal job at being able to make people laugh and also kind of say like, hey, look, this is what I think life is about, but also I'm going to make fun of it at the same time.
Right.
And like a lot of his movies are phenomenal because he found that balance. And I think that's what I think some of these comedians are doing nowadays. And I actually rather enjoy it because they're like really hitting the head on the nail.
Yeah. Like
nail on the
head. But
You tried.
I did my best.
that was Lil Dicky. He just released the first season of his show, and it was like the highest ratings that any FX show has had in like a long time. Apparently,
Little Dicky is a rapper.
Yeah, he's a rapper, but I think he's 33. And so they were like, well, why are you venturing into this now? And he's like, well, in 10 years, nobody's going to care about me making jokes about drugs and girls and playing basketball. And so he's kind of going like the Donald Glover route, trying to like rebrand himself as like he's a creative person and like in different mediums rather than just being, that like the fad rapper, like the comedian that somehow fell into a music career.
Yeah, and I mean it works for a lot of people, or it works for some people. Is like, I think I forget the trajectory he went on, but Jack Black turned a predominantly music-driven career into a huge acting career. Now he's kind of a darling of that.
What did he do in music? I didn't know he did music.
Tenacious D.
Yeah.
They
I
started
didn't know
with
that.
They started with he started with Tenacious D. They made a movie about it, but until maybe School of Rock around that era.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, School of Rock was big for him.
Yeah, before that, I think he played small parts acting, but he was very active musically.
Yeah.
But then it was that role, and around that time was also Nacho Libre, I think.
Yeah, Nacho Libre was around there.
And then Kung Fu Panda was huge for him, and now he's doing the things where he's playing the. Is that falling off again?
No, we're good.
Okay. Where he's doing like in Jumanji or in he was also pretty good in King Kong in 2005.
I think one of the movies that I actually really like him in is the one where the two women decide to go to each other's homes for Christmas.
Oh yeah, what's that called?
I'm trying to think. I want to say The Holiday, but I think that's the one with Queen Latifah.
I have no idea.
I think you're
No,
right.
that's The Last Holiday. So I do think it is The Holiday. But yeah, there's these two women decide that they want to get away from their lives and they trade homes, and one of them falls in love with the other's brother, and Jack Black is the guy who is either a wife or a girlfriend. And
Yeah, the first thing when he pulls up Jack Black here is School of Rock, and Nacho Libre and King Kong.
see what. Yeah, we're looking at these here, trying to figure out which one he was in.
So yeah, if you scroll down all the way to his first ones, it was probably. Yeah, he's done a ton of it, especially through 2005
Holy
and on.
Oh man, he has been in a lot of stuff.
He was
Yeah.
in the Muppets.
Wow.
So yeah, he was. Looks like this is all TV, handful of TV stuff and bit parts and.
Yeah, I want to say it was in the 2000s. At least it was probably somewhere around the 20, like
I was
20.
gonna say 2010.
Tenacious
Yeah,
D and the
right,
Pick of
right.
Destiny
Maybe a
was
little
early 2000s, wasn't it?
I don't know. I honestly didn't know that.
Oh, that's
came
one that we
first.
have to watch. The Jack Black Spider-Man.
TV short.
I believe
That is-
Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny also was one of the last movie appearances of Dio, wasn't it? It was pretty shortly before he
not
died.
sure.
I don't know.
The Holiday. That is it.
The holiday, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2006. The Holiday. Yeah, he was really good in that one. Like
Yeah.
his character was built really well because it's him and his the person that he becomes involved with find this old playwright, and they find out that he had actually been really big in the community, and he's just like sitting at home with no friends, and both of them together go and get him out, and like they actually get him an award right before he dies, and it's actually a really good movie from both perspectives. But yeah, Jack Black definitely has some range.
Yeah, he does. He's a lot of fun. But he was one of those ones who just kind of started as a comedy actor, music guy.
Well, same as
Adam Sandler.
Fresh Prince.
Yeah.
Will Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say
He
DJ.
started
Jazzy
as the family-friendly rapper.
Right.
And then he moved into all the action stuff.
Right.
Actually, a perfect one. Before we started recording, we were watching Airplane. Leslie Nielsen
Oh yeah,
was a very serious character actor
Yeah.
until Airplane. And from that moment on, he only did comedies where he still played a dead serious character.
Oh, Leslie's a guy.
Yes, he was the doctor.
I was so confused.
Leslie Nielsen was the doctor.
But that's the
Oh,
joke
okay.
when he says, "Don't call me Shirley," because I'm sure he was when he grew up being named Leslie,
Probably, yeah.
and so it's a response. You know, it's kind of that's what's funny about that joke. Don't call me Shirley.
When I think before that, people didn't realize how funny a guy playing the situation perfectly straight could be in such a ridiculous movie, which then spawned the phenomenal Naked Gun and what is the police show?
Police Squad.
It was Police Squad, yeah.
Yeah.
Those were just absolutely hilarious things that might not have happened without Airplane. And Airplane, I think, popularized that idea of, you have a comedy movie and then you have one person in it who is just totally serious the whole way through.
yeah, it takes everything literally.
Yes.
And you have
Like
the,
a Drax.
Right.
and then you have the one guy that's supposed to be comic relief, and he's just weird in the middle of it.
Yeah.
He reminded me of because this is my first time seeing Airplane. He reminded me of the guy from Parks and Rec that was just always like, "What are you doing? Now you've broken everything." Like that guy towards the later
yeah.
seasons.
Yeah,
Like he was
it's
absolutely
forever.
priceless because he would
It's,
just go off on random things.
They need to storm
Billy
out.
Eichner.
Yeah.
It's Billy Eichner.
Yeah.
His
Yeah,
character.
him. Yeah, it was great because like somebody would bring something to him and he'd be like, it's like, "Peach, I wanted orange. You've ruined it," and just like walk away. I'm like, this guy is hilarious. And like
just
that's
so
who he
intense.
reminded me of. That guy for the comic relief.
Ruined everything.
I haven't seen Parks and Rec in forever, so I don't remember the character.
I
He was.
No matter how much you
yeah, he was
describe
in,
it, it won't
yeah,
help me.
he was later in the series. He was one of the
Yeah.
new additions,
Yeah,
but
he was the Eagleton. He was the Eagleton Donna, I think, and Donna like walked away and was like, "He's better than me." Spoiler alert!
remember
if you haven't
Donna.
seen Parks and Rec.
But
yeah, if you haven't seen it by now, it's
If you
definitely
haven't seen
worth
it by
a view.
now, you aren't
Yeah.
gonna watch it.
But yeah. So I don't know. In conclusion, American Pickle might be good, might not.
Yeah,
We'll wait and see. When did
don't
it say it was going to come out? It might say in the description of the YouTube video.
2025.
Wow, that's a heck of a brine there.
I see what you did there.
So where does it? Yeah, click show more there.
For our listening audience,
HBO Max,
we're
be the
looking up
first.
information.
Oh no, it doesn't say yet. Does it?
They might not have a release date now
No,
because
it's
things
not
things
gonna-
have been delayed now.
Yeah.
They probably
Yeah, true. Well, I mean, but if they have a trailer like this, they got to be pretty close.
Right.
Well, we'll find out. We'll find out more about it eventually. You know.
yeah, definitely.
Yep. Gotcha.
It's HBO Max, so it has to be in the next couple of years before it changes into something else, right?
Probably, yeah.
HBO Morph.
So, what were you saying earlier about Avengers?
So, over the past weekend and the last couple days, I have gone through and I've watched from the beginning all of the MCU movies except for Hulk and Spider-Man 1 and 2 because they were I couldn't find them. They weren't on Disney Plus or Netflix.
There's a Hulk movie in the MCU.
Yeah, it came out right after Iron Man 2, like the same year.
Yeah, it's the one
Norton.
with Edward Norton.
Yeah. So rather than just sit here and rehash all of I really wanted to talk about them, but rather than sit here and just rehash all the movies, I wanted to talk more with everybody about how how they affected you, like what you thought of them as they were coming out, and what that part of your life was like, and if they like. For me, I know they came out at a formative part of my life. I don't know how much that would be for you, Dad, but I know we're the right ages where we were young teenagers when they were coming out.
Yeah, this was like I was in like third grade, so it's pretty much my entire memory is the MCU.
Yeah. The very first thing I did write, though, which I didn't start writing any notes really until I actually was going by this exact this thing of how to. I didn't watch them chronologically. I'm sorry. I watched them in order of release.
I pulled this up because I wanted to see what year. So what was
What's the
first
year?
Avenger?
2011. It was the last one to come out before the
See, that's what I
Avengers.
wanted. I was actually looking for that, not this. Not,
The very first thing I wrote was that how simple things were back then. Simple villains with minor motivations. Like
Yeah.
Ironmonger literally just wanted to keep selling weapons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and that's actually one of the things I thought was kind of cool through like the arc is that you went from dealing with small things to dealing with bigger things to dealing with bigger
Yeah.
things, and you actually progressed instead of it kind of being like, oh hey, like you guys beat Thanos, and now you're dealing with a bunch of little guys but having problems,
yeah.
and they did a pretty good job at that.
Yeah.
And I
One of the other ones I noted from early on in it is they play it up a lot, especially after like Civil War, about how, and especially in Endgame when he also, by the way, heavy spoilers because if you haven't seen them by now, you're probably not listening to this anyway. They play a lot up on the idea of Cap having been a goody two shoes. He wasn't really. Like, even from the first Avenger, he even then seems kind of disenfranchised with the American dream. And, like, but then they play it up like he used to be this perfect person when he always seemed to question it.
So I actually my hands down favorite MCU movie is Winter Soldier,
That's
yeah,
what Dad's is
I
too.
like it too.
because I think what Cap did and what was and kind of what you're saying like with the formative part of your lives, like this is one of those things that kind of sticks in the back of my head, is that he was an individual, like the actual idea of an individual, and freedom is what mattered. And
Yeah.
even though it was his friends that were going against freedom, being an individual was more important than being a part of your group.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, if you're going to be a tyrant, I'm going to go after you too.
Yeah.
And it really was. And that was what made Cap. It wasn't that he was a goody two shoes, but it was that he was a strong moral character.
Mm-hmm.
And even if he wasn't exactly right, he was true and honest. And that was the
Yeah.
point.
One other thing I noticed watching through, and this is still just up to Avengers. I don't know why I caught this, but when remember Clint, how Hawkeye gets his mind controlled.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When he does, he shoots left-handed. Like he draws the bow with his left hand, but when he's not, he draws with his right hand. I have no idea if it was intentional or not, but it was
could-
kind of interesting.
How could it be unintentional?
I don't know.
Just
Reversing shots. You'll see that a lot in movies. That's why they like symmetry, is it makes it easier to reverse a shot if you need to.
Got a point. That is pretty neat though.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was something that they always intended on doing, or if the actor was kind of like, hey, I don't really like doing it this way. Can I do it the other way?
Maybe. It might have been a character decision by the actor. It might have been a little detail thrown in the script. But
The MCU is good with little details like that too.
Yeah.
So it's not outside the realm of possibility.
it wouldn't
that was
surprise me at all if
planned.
they said, like, oh, Loki is left-handed, and that's why when when Clint is mind controlled by Loki, he shoots with his left hand.
Yeah, that would be
Like,
something
all
that
right,
they would
cool,
do.
I'll take that.
So I have a question. So you're saying you went through the MCU.
boy.
Yes.
So
Those are not the MCU.
well, but they're Marvel.
They are.
Not
But
MCU is different.
yes,
I know, but this is Marvel.
So
So to
what's-
really know, you would have to go back to 1944 and watch the Republic black and white serial film.
loosely based on.
Yeah, but it was Marvel.
sometimes you're so difficult.
What about this?
But seriously,
But then
so
you
walk
look at the
through
next
these.
entry on that list.
Howard the Duck.
I
Ugh,
was gonna say the most
That's
important
Marvel.
one that we need to watch is Howard the
so
Duck.
bad.
It's co-produced by Lucasfilm.
Yes, it was. That was a mistake.
So anyway,
And
so
then there's unreleased on there too. Fantastic Four from 1994. Should we see that too?
I don't know if you can.
okay,
it looks
but-
unreleased.
We've
but
already
it's
got
Marvel.
enough.
And Blade.
Blade was was
was
really
good.
one of the first ones before X-Men. Like,
X-Men was the first in the MCU.
no, Blade is Marvel,
I know, but nobody watches Blade.
and X-Men
So-
wasn't in the MCU.
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
You say that, I remember watching it on TV, going, "This is awesome." And my
X-Men
mom's
and
like, "It's a
Spider-Man
little
really
old for you."
popularized.
I'm like, no.
And then there's Ang Lee's Hulk on there.
Yep.
So the first actual movie in the MCU was Iron Man, right?
Yes.
And that was in
2008.
2008. Yeah, so I was 10. So in 4th grade, that was whenever I saw that, and that's whenever I was
Saw what? Spider-Man?
2008.
Iron Man.
Oh, Iron
And that was
Man.
whenever the journey to build an Iron Man suit was born, and then
Yeah.
it died when I turned like 14 and realized just how incredibly complex
I didn't
that
know
is.
Iron Man was nominated for 2 Oscars.
So that's why I pulled this list up. Right now, audience members, we're looking at a list of all of the movies based on Marvel and what year they came out or were shelved.
Yeah.
And Iron Man is 2008,
Along with the Incredible Hulk.
and as well as the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, because
which I
Robert
didn't
Downey Jr.
watch.
shows up at the end.
Yep.
Well, I think I do think, because kind of what we may have talked about this before we started recording, but I think you'd mentioned that they didn't actually announce that they were going to start doing like a massive universe until 2010, I think it was.
Did they?
And it, like, I would actually like to see this. If we continue to scroll down, I want to see if the Oscars started to drop off the longer it
They already
went.
did. Go back up. Captain America wasn't nominated.
Yeah. Well, the
Neither
first
was
Captain
Thor.
America was kind of like it was good, but I agree that it wasn't the best.
Yeah.
But I did notice that like even later,
Avengers was nominated. Iron Man 3 was nominated. Thor 2 wasn't.
Didn't deserve
Captain
it.
America was.
Winter Soldier was good.
Guardians of the Galaxy was nominated for 2. Ultron, Ant-Man weren't.
Fantastic Four wasn't.
No, that wasn't MCU either.
Infinity War.
Fantastic.
Stick, yeah.
Fantastic.
Civil War wasn't, surprisingly.
I can't believe this wasn't.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, Deadpool was a good
Doctor Strange was nominated. Logan was nominated,
Logan.
obviously, even though it's not MCU.
one. Well, yeah. Well, I did find it interesting that like these movies were like busting records, and a lot of them weren't getting nominated.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, well, clearly Hollywood saw that this was just going to be a powerhouse for awards, and they just wouldn't give it to them.
Yeah.
Like there's a handful of them that would get one, but like the idea that Endgame, what is it? Not Endgame. Well, yeah, Endgame. Endgame got nominated for 1 Oscar.
It was for, I guarantee you all of these were for special effects.
Yeah, special
Yeah.
effects, and I would say that probably Guardians of the Galaxy, the second one, might have been for soundtrack or something like that.
Or
Yeah.
costume, too.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
another one you'll see.
That's what.
Yeah, but the idea that it only got nominated for like 1 award,
But I mean,
is ridiculous.
But I mean, the Oscars, they have their. I mean, there's a reason the term Oscar bait exists. Is that specific movies get Best Picture.
well, it is funny. I did notice that. What was it? The year that Black Panther won, because Black
won-
Panther has 3.
And they were nominated for 4 more in addition to that.
Yeah. But it was one of those things where like you could watch as the awards were going on, they created categories. And when they created categories, you went, "Oh, that's Black Panther's meeting all of those." And like, because they knew that they were just going to start giving it awards.
Yeah.
And it's almost pre-known. And there's a bunch of awards that don't get a ton of.
Well, yeah, you pay for your consideration entries.
Yeah.
Like the Oscars are marketing. Like that's just the reality of it. Is
That
you
always
could make the
bothered
most
me.
art house film of all time, but if you don't pay to get your for your consideration video put in, they're not going to look at it for it.
Yeah, that always bothered me. If you're gonna have an award, like make it based on the actual.
But I mean, how do you weed out all the? If you have to review every movie, that's a lot to look at.
Well, if you're the one giving out the award, that should be your job.
Not if your award is marketing. To say that you got nominated, that sells copies of things. Or if
Oh
you
no,
won
what I'm
Oscars.
saying is like if you are the industry giving out the award, like it should be your duty to watch the movies and see which ones had the best picture and had the
they
best
do
scores. And,
if they send the movies and scores in.
yeah.
That's the other thing is a lot of these movies might not even be sending because I think you have to send a for your consideration for any category you want to apply for. They don't just give them out. So if you want your score considered for best score, you need to submit it for that.
I always thought the for your consideration was more of a, here's my donation or here's my, insert bribe here
Yes.
for your consideration. But I always thought that it was you didn't have to have that.
It's for a specific
But it's
category.
used.
Yes.
Yeah,
Interesting.
because I
Interesting.
remember.
Okay.
That's
Then
how
maybe I'm
that
misunderstanding
was how
these
story
things are
details
chosen.
of the last, or no, that's how some story stuff of the Last Jedi got leaked, was because the for your consideration for this best original score leaked details of the track names, leaked details of the plot.
I don't know. Interesting.
But didn't they, for the Emmys, didn't they nominate all of the characters that were like in Game of Thrones? Did they nominate all of them for Best Actor and Best Actress?
Probably.
I'm pretty sure they said
Again,
they
marketing.
were like, yeah, well, like obviously they're gonna pick someone. And they're like, we didn't want to make that value judgment, so we submitted everyone's names individually. So like
Yeah,
rather
you'll
than as
see
a
that.
franchise.
But I mean, a TV show doesn't play the same way as a movie. Where a movie, you're going to have a clear one or two leading actors and then a handful of supporting actors.
Yeah.
But in a show, it's not as cut and dry because you have more time to dedicate to people.
Yeah. Usually a show has multiple. Like your supporting characters can also be almost like main characters.
Exactly.
That makes it hard to have a distinct role.
All right, so it's 2008. We have 8 kids. The youngest was
That
just
sounds
born, right? So Lizzie, no, I think we had all 9. What's Leah's birthday?
That sounds right.
Yeah, because Lizzie was 2005, because it was right when we
Leah's not
moved
that
into
much
the new
younger than
house.
her.
Right. So, okay, so at 2008, we've got 9 kids all living in the house. We have our own business. We have a lot going on. And we're homeschooling just about everybody at that point.
How old?
And then Iron Man comes out. You would have been 14,
Yes. No.
94 to 2008. No, 6.
I'm
Yeah.
subtracting because that
8.
was
What's
that
8
was-
Yeah, you're
plus
4
6?
years
12
older than
That was
me.
12 years ago.
I was 10, so you were 14.
Yeah, 14.
Yeah, that sounds right. Okay.
So 14 was the oldest, and the youngest was like 1 or 2 or whatever it is. And Iron Man comes out. And so, keeping in mind that elderly people like me and your mom we knew about Robert Downey Jr. from things that he had done as a kid, because he was like sort of not Rat Pack, but Brat Pack and that kind of era of the younger actors coming up. And he was a hot mess. Like the guy made a movie that I watched, and I don't recommend it to anybody because honestly, I felt like taking a shower just after watching it, and the name escapes me. But so he was like off the rails, and then one of the first things I saw him in where he came back was he was lip syncing an Elton John song, and I'm pretty sure it was all one take, where he is walking forward and the cameraman's walking behind him and he's singing this song. Like, he's not singing it, but
Yeah.
it's an Elton John song, and he's mouthing it and walking through this pretty empty, stark house. And so that was kind of him coming back and trying to make good on having been a hot mess.
Oh yeah.
So this was a movie?
Less Than Zero. That was the name of
I never heard of it.
the movie is called Less Than Zero, and toward the end of the movie, he becomes a male prostitute, and it's painful to watch. It truly is. Like, you watch it and you want to take a shower because it's so.
But I mean, the video. Was the video like a standalone, like
Just a music video. Yeah, it was back when they did music videos, like when
Like MTV kind
yeah,
of thing.
when
yeah.
MTV actually had music.
I was so confused. I thought that you were saying that at the end of the movie that you watched, this thing showed up, and I was just like, "Oh, is that technically the beginning
No,
of the MCU?"
and watching Less Than Zero was almost like a documentary of this poor guy's life. I mean, because he just hit rock bottom, and he
Yeah.
had a horrible, whatever the situation was. I don't know. I didn't live with the guy, but and then to see him come back with coming out with the Iron Man, and the directors were just so good at utilizing his quippiness and his ability to just play that part, and it was classic. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I saw when I was watching it. That was so impressive that he could come back from that. Now, I've seen him in situations in kind of like real world videos. Like the one we were watching was there was a chef involved, and it was him sitting at the table, Holland, the Spider-Man kid,
Yeah.
Tom Holland.
Tom Holland, he was sitting there and maybe Feige. And they were sitting there, and it was maybe, I don't know where I saw this, and they were all talking, and he was just kind of a dick. Like, he was sitting there, and he kind of would interrupt, and he would be all snarky, and he'd call the waiter over, and he would just talk while somebody else is just talking. And he would just talk like I'm talking right now. And it was just, I don't know. And it just kind of showed me a picture of him that he's not much different than what he plays. So I don't know that Stark is really that different than him as a person.
Well, no, that's famously what it was, is that the Iron Man was pretty loosely scripted. They knew what they wanted to get out of each scene, and they knew where each scene needed to go, but they had such chops on there. They had Robert Downey Jr., they had Jeff Bridges, they had Gwyneth Paltrow, which, say what you want about her, she's a good actress. So they just threw these situations at them and just let them ad-lib it.
Yeah.
And that's what really made the magic of Iron Man, is it was just these phenomenal actors playing off of each other. Mm-hmm. And that was what really worked for it. But that, because of that, what we know as Tony Stark and Iron Man is pretty much just Robert Downey Jr.
Right.
And while it looks fun and quippy in the movies, in real life, that thing is pretty irritating. And you could see how someone like a Captain America would get irritated with it pretty quickly.
Right. And want to smash his head open with his shield.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did actually enjoy. I think one of the main themes throughout the story was at the beginning they set it up so that Iron Man and Cap were kind of opposed on how to approach situations, and in the end they both prove each other wrong. From that initial meeting in Avengers, which I thought was really cool, because the one says everything special out of you comes out of the bottle, and then the other guy said you'll never put your life down on the line for anybody else around you, and which was really cool. And they did a really good job through both of their stories, where they actually come to a head in Civil War, where their two ways of solving problems collide, and they respect each other more about it, and then they prove each other wrong and understand, like, they're both. I just thought that was really probably one of the best, like, character to character arcs that they had.
Yeah, just because they're such different people. Mm-hmm. Is that, Captain America has his ideals, but Iron Man just goes by his feelings of life.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a very emotional person, whether or not he shows it that much. I mean, you see, and as much as I despise it, Iron Man 3 really shows him struggling with that. Like, it shows him struggling with the PTSD of, he's this person who's not used to putting his life on the line, suddenly doing it in such a dramatic way as he did in New York and in Avengers. Right. But you don't walk away from that without being affected.
Yeah, I think they could have done better with it in the third one, but it really showed that he had a problem with, I don't want to lose the people around me and I want to protect them, because he's not a soldier. Yeah. And he's not used to losing people. And as where Cap lost a ton of people, and he understands that that's the price you pay to fight evil.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where you have the two different ideologies come together, and I thought that was one of probably the best character development throughout the whole thing. Was just them being able to effectively oppose each other and respect each other and come together and do something great in the end.
Well, and in Avengers, Captain America calls him out on what Captain Kirk gets called out on a lot. Is there's always an answer from you, like, because what does Cap say to him? Like, you won't go under the wire, you won't hold back the wire for your friend or something like that.
Yeah, you won't lay on the wire.
And then Iron Man's, you won't lay on the wire. Yeah. And Iron Man says, I'll just cut the wire. And there's always an answer for you, isn't there?
Right.
Yeah.
And basically putting it in his face that, like, you'll hit that no-win scenario. Like, the question is, how do you handle it?
Yeah. And to be honest with you, I just actually kind of picked up on it. That was a phenomenal bit of foreshadowing where Cap is actually right, where he's like, you're going to be in a no-win situation and you have to make a sacrifice. And it's either going to be you, someone else, or it's going to be one of those things where you have to choose between two people, because there isn't always an answer. And I think that's one of the things that's really kind of cool about that, is they make a point. They tell you what's going to happen in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it is subtle enough to where when it happens, you go, oh, wait, yeah, that did happen back there. And that's why you can still talk about it. It's been 3 years since that movie came out now.
Which, Endgame?
Endgame?
That was last year.
2 years? Last year?
It was May of last year.
I was thinking 2018.
Yeah, it came out May of last year.
Oh, okay.
Infinity War came out in 2018.
But that's one of those things where I think even in a few years you'll be able to still pick apart little details. That came
But I
out.
think that's more the good storytelling of just leaving yourself threads to, like, and having these characters that are very much their own characters. They very much have these strong personalities which means you can play off of those and bring those back in big ways later.
Oh yeah, well, and I think that was actually probably one of the best things about Endgame is they never had to go back and re-show you what happened. So like the on your left bit at the end, was hilarious. Like as soon as I heard on your left, I was like, "That's great." But that's one of those things they can make those references and everyone knows what it means.
But that was from how many movies ago?
Exactly,
and it had never been brought up again. So we haven't gotten your thoughts yet, Cole. So it seems like we're kind of talking about the first 5. So Iron Man, if you want to talk about a Hulk, Thor, Captain America, and Avengers, and kind of like, what your thoughts on them were and how they affected you, which...
Well, that's pretty much all I remember from like my childhood until now is the MCU. Like on my iPod and like all of that was constantly just some kind of quote or silhouette of one of the superheroes from the MCU. And like I said, like, I wanted to be an engineer and build an Iron Man suit. And then like Thor made me want to be this big buff guy. But like, I think that what you guys were saying, how they're all like very authentically themselves. And like even last night I was watching Thor: Dark World or 2 nights ago.
World.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I hadn't seen it, and it just like the only thing about it that really struck me was the fact that Thor like he gets into the fight with his dad where he's like, how many people are gonna die before you like stop this? He said as many people as necessary, like we'll spill every drop of Asgardian blood. And then like I'm trying to think, like their qualities, like you would hear that and you'd think, okay, but at what cost? And you associate it with someone like Captain America, and it's interesting whenever you put them together in something like like Civil War, some of the later ones where they're getting into these issues where they're like, okay, well, like there's the divisiveness between them, but it doesn't necessarily happen the way that you would expect it to. And I don't know, I thought that the thing I really liked about the MCU is that I felt like they scaled it to keep it from becoming irrelevant or like falling into a niche. So like people would hear superhero movies and they think, okay, that's for the comic book nerds, and they're always going to end up winning in the end, and they're going to fight this trivial villain that'll change every movie. And then they kind of expanded it, and so it gets to the point where they're kind of, you see them battling amongst themselves based on, is what they're doing even right? And you see them questioning it. And then like other things like artificial intelligence with Age of Ultron, and they're arguing about whether or not it ever should have even happened, and like at what cost. And like Tony says, like this is like the point of this is so that the Avengers aren't here anymore. And he's like, is that the point? And you see it's just really interesting to me seeing the way that they kind of grew it to keep everyone captivated, and it didn't always end in the hero wins and everyone comes out unscathed in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the Ultron. It's because Age of Ultron is what really sparks the rest of the story from that point on. It sparks the Sokovia Accords and everything. Mm-hmm. Where and I couldn't, it kept bothering me when I was watching Civil War, is that what was the alternative in their head? Like the woman who walks up to him at the beginning and hands him the photo of her son. What was her alternative? Is the Avengers don't go there and Ultron ends the world? Like collateral damage is the reality of...
Right, but that's Cap's point.
Yeah.
I mean, that's his point whenever Congressman Ross or whatever his name was.
Secretary of Defense, I think. At that point.
Is standing there and saying that. I mean, that's his point. Is okay. So we're gonna sit around. Well, it's like in the DC Batman versus Superman, where there's a shot where the congresswoman is being interviewed by some news guy, and he said, "So how do you explain to a family who Superman could have saved, but he didn't because you wouldn't let him on principle? What do you say to them because their daughter died? Are you saying there shouldn't be a Superman?" And she said, "There is." And it's like, that's kind of the end. Like, I mean, they don't have to address it. And that's the problem, I think, with Civil War, is they never address that.
Yeah.
They never really address the people who want to contain them. And this is, okay, yeah, you know, it always has to come down to government.
Yeah, all right.
I was just waiting to see
Yeah,
how
Yeah.
long it would take.
It's kind of in our world right now is when it comes down to government. I mean, they are truly the monopolistic force in a given geographic area. And you're going to say that because our governments, even currently, I know we're stepping outside of storytelling, but our governments do everything right, and that's who these superheroes have to bow to
Yeah.
to
that
make
was
these
Cap's
decisions.
argument.
Are you kidding me?
Well, so then I expanded on that by writing this down about how. So they go on to talk about in the movie how there's been an increase in world-ending threats as the Avengers have gotten more powerful, but everything they've done has been reactionary. Even Tony, if you want to follow that line of
Except
logic,
Ultron.
you're saying that, which was directly his fault.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
But if you want to follow that chain of logic to its logical end, what you're saying is Tony should have just died in that cave.
Right.
That is what you're telling him is
Right.
it would have been better if you had just died there instead of building that first suit, which then caused other people to start building suits, which meant you had to build suits to defend yourself and the people you love. And so the threats just kept getting bigger, and you had to keep building up your arsenal to defend people. And then it gets to the point where where I wrote that so if they did have this oversight, what would have changed the events of Sokovia? And they did deploy the Avengers to Sokovia. How would that have changed the people's dying?
Well, I actually think
Right.
what was really cool about Civil War, and one of the reasons why, probably my favorite scenes in Civil War are right at the beginning, because they actually make good arguments for both sides, which I think you pointed to Cap's point, which are people have agendas, and I'm not going to be beholden to somebody else's agenda.
Right.
And Iron Man's was actually set up from the beginning. When he came back out of those caves, he was like, I'm done creating weapons. I don't want anybody to get hurt anymore. I want everyone to be protected. And that's why he goes to the government and says, I want everyone to be protected. I don't want anyone to get hurt anymore. And I almost hurt someone. I need to be regulated.
And it was constantly his downfall. That was something.
Yeah.
That was one of the only other thoughts that I had coming into this was how, in spite of how he spends the entire MCU pretty much trying to make things right, his past continues to come back and haunt him.
Well, but that's the thing is Age of Ultron is an okay one, but it's got a lot of important scenes. And one of the more important scenes in it is at the beginning when Scarlet Witch gives him that vision of all the Avengers dying and dead and all of these forces going to Earth. Is on one end, you can see it as he has his greatest fear is his friends dying. But the flip side of that is he is so arrogant that he thinks that he is the deciding factor on that. That it's about him doing more or less that affects the outcome here.
Right.
That it's all if he had done more, if I had done this, I could have saved them. It was only me.
Right.
So that's the flip
yeah.
side of it is he is so arrogant that he thinks he is the arbiter of all of this.
Well, and I agree with that, but I also think that's exactly what causes him to kind of agree with Cap and put his life down. It was because after he creates Ultron, he kind of goes, "Oh, I can be the one that causes them to die too," and then in the end, he kind of realizes, "Oh, I've got to be the one that makes the difference, and it's not about me solving it; it's about me making the difference."
Yeah.
But I mean, I go back to what Matt said. What changes? What has changed and what changes in any of it? They have the big,
Yeah, that was the problem with the movie.
Civil War, right? I mean, but what ends up happening? I mean, it go to the DC universe as well. What ends up happening? I mean, basically at the end of the DC, Civil War, basically, they're still the superheroes. They're
Yeah.
still,
Yep.
in fact, they had to be there. Well, it's the same thing in Civil War. Like, what really was resolved?
They kind of just
Yeah.
forget about him.
Right.
They bring
That's
them
why
up
they-
again in Ant-Man versus the Wasp, or Ant-Man and the Wasp, because he's under house arrest because he broke the Sokovia Accords,
Right.
which is a plot point in the movie. And then they mention it, I think, once or twice in
Wasn't
Infinity
Endgame,
War.
Infinity. It wasn't
Yeah,
Endgame.
they-
it was Infinity War.
It was Infinity
they-
War.
they
me-
mention them, but
they
it's
mention
not a
it
big
and
deal.
hand wave it away.
Right.
They never bring him up really again.
Right.
That's why they needed a fourth Captain America movie, because what they needed to do was show what they were doing to subvert the Sokovia Accords to continue to do what they were doing. So they needed to have one where, and I don't think that Iron Man should have called him in for help, but I think it should be one of those things where effectively they were doing kind of vigilantism, where they were finding where there were problems and realized, hey, listen, nobody's going to go help those people. It's our job to go help those people. And then that would have actually you would have had two worlds going on, and that would have showed the split afterwards, which would have made everyone coming together at the end even bigger.
Yeah.
Right.
because I think the scene where Scarlet or not I was thinking Scarlett Johansson and I thought Scarlet Witch. I combined them. Black Widow and Cap come in and they're like, "Listen, you can't be here. You know, you've broken the Sokovia Accords." He goes, "It's not a big deal anymore. I'll fight you too." Is not as big of a scene because it never showed them continue. You never got to see them
Yeah.
fight against it for good.
Right.
And the whole issue of the Sokovia Accords is, how do you enforce it
Right.
against these people that are, in some
exactly.
cases, literally deities?
Well, like the scene in which Superman movie where he walks in handcuffed. Like he allows himself to be
I
handcuffed.
think it was Batman vs Superman because he walks into the hearing, right?
No, it's the
But he wasn't
Man of Steel.
handcuffed for that.
Man
yeah,
of
it was
Steel.
Man of Steel.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was right after one of my favorite lines in a movie, which is where he goes to the Catholic Church, and somehow Hollywood backed into the right opinion on this one, where they were like, sometimes faith comes first and trust comes later, and I was like, holy crap, you got religion right. I was like, how did you do this?
Well, speaking of that, I agree with you on that they backed into on the Superman movie, but then also him walking in with the handcuffs. On one hand, I saw it was interesting, but in reality, it's like, how would you really contain him? I mean, even Batman
you don't.
can't, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know. And so I do
It
think
takes
that,
Superman basically giving up and saying, like, fine, kill me.
well, let me ask you guys this then. How do we take how we're talking about Marvel and how we're talking about this whole idea, if we're going to focus on the kind of the Civil War thing and all that, how do you apply that to the real world? Because if art is anything, it should be something that helps us in some way, either by saying don't do this or by saying do this, helps us in some way cope with the real world, because that's what we live in. You know, we watch Hollywood and we think ooh ah and all that, but in reality we're watching and hoping we gain something from that. How do you gain something from that on the geopolitical arena? Because it is true. How do you contain somebody who has that kind of power? They don't have to be superheroes. They can be the guy with the button, the big red button, to send a nuke. You know, how are you going to stop them? How do you, we have to address that. And whether it's at a lower level in your community or it's the world level with the UN and all these other agencies, what do you do?
Well, and I think that's the thing that these superhero movies do well is they take you out of direct conversations and then you actually have an abstract of it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what do you do when there's forces you can't control? What do you do how should you live your life when you don't have complete control, but you can control your actions? Like, do you let somebody else make your decisions? Do you live your life no matter what? Like, do you take the Iron Man route where you say somebody else has the answer because I clearly don't? Or do you take the Cap route and say, even if I don't have the answer, I'm going to do my best to figure it out? And that's one of those things that I think these movies actually address.
I mean, I think it comes down to the thing of Iron Man wants it so that it's not about freedom, it's about safety. Whereas
Yes.
Captain America's like, everyone should have the freedom to
Well,
protect
I
themselves.
think a perfect example of that is what was it? What was the one with the second Avengers?
Ultron?
No, the one with the flying warships.
The first one?
First Avengers.
Was that the first one?
Yeah, the second
What,
one was
the-
Ultron.
Flying warship. Are you talking about
Oh, you're talking
Winter
about
Soldier?
Yeah.
Because they have the three that go up into the
Yeah,
air and
Winter
they're going to
Soldier.
kill anybody
Yeah.
that might be
Right.
against them.
So
Yeah.
that's a great one where where he's telling them, "Oh, it's we'll be able to kill these people before it even happens. It's a shield,
Yeah.
or whatever." And he
It's a
says,
preemptive
"Sounds
strike.
like it sounds like a prison." Or whatever he said.
Yeah.
I know he says that to him about when they were talking in his apartment about
Yeah.
the shield, and he says sounds like a cold prison or something like that. But he even said that to Ross whenever they were walking along there, and he said, "How do your judge, jury, and executioner all at one time?"
Yeah.
But that's supposedly protecting us. And I mean, there was a clear assault there on Homeland Security.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what they were talking about there. is-
Okay, so to step away from politics a little bit, caught something when I watched Winter Soldier. Scroll down a little bit. I want to see where it was in relation to Doctor Strange. Because Winter Soldier was 2014. Doctor Strange was 2016. In 2014, we have the Winter Soldier, and toward the end, they drop Jasper Sitwell off a building. Falcon carries him back up, and he starts listing names of people this algorithm has picked out. And one of them he names is Stephen Strange.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is 2 years before he becomes Doctor Strange, isn't it?
I think the thing was that even before he became Doctor Strange, he was a threat because of his. Because
He was an arrogant surgeon?
Well, so the
You
idea
never know where
in
they're going to
Winter-
go.
So the idea in Winter Soldier was, you're looking at totalitarianism versus freedom, and they're looking at anybody that would be a threat to their regime, and Strange's personality will bring that to him. So like Cap, if Cap was just Steve Rogers and still the scrawny guy, it was about his thoughts and the way he lives his life, not the fact that he was powerful.
But the problem with Doctor Strange is that the accident and the surgeries afterward profoundly changed him. He would have kept on his path of making money, doing surgeries, picking and choosing surgeries that he would be successful at. He would keep doing that until he retired if it hadn't been for the events of the movie Doctor Strange, where he gets into the car crash and ruins his hands.
Unless the point they're trying to make is that this algorithm is so prescient that it is able to...
At that point, it's just magic.
Right. Well, it's no different than if you read the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov. The main character in it is a super brilliant scientist who looks a lot like Isaac Asimov, who creates this program where he goes millennia in the future, and he only shows up because he uses decayed radium or something like that to know when the time will be. Shows up exactly when there are crises in the human race, because he's that smart that he knows to, which is ridiculous. But that's exactly how those kinds of people think.
Yeah.
Is that I'm so much smarter than you little people, and so I think that's what they're trying to do, is that we're so smart that we can
And
figure
I
this
get
out.
that it's a storytelling vehicle.
Right.
But it's kind of indicative of the issue that Hollywood tends to have of it's the algorithm.
Right.
It's machine learning. It's AI. It's like,
Right.
doesn't work that way.
Well,
if you as a person couldn't intuit that someone is going to be like that, a computer's probably not going to either.
No.
Well, I think it's interesting is because Cap has a shield for a reason. Is he's there to defend and respond, not attack.
Yes.
And that's the whole idea. Is like when you're taking a preemptive strike like that, you are making the assumption that person is going to do something wrong in the future, and you're preemptively taking them out before they've ever done anything, and they don't ever get the chance to not make the mistake.
Minority Report.
Yeah, and that's exactly why it's so important that Cap is against that. And I think it was more of the it's possible, there is a high likelihood that if Stephen Strange knew that we were taking over, Stephen Strange would vote in the different direction. He would say something against it, because they would affect his life too, and he would be against that. So it's not even, it really was it. And I think that's why Winter Soldier was such a good movie, is it was a movie about different ideologies. Is it freedom or is it security, or do you let people make mistakes and have that messiness, or do you take the preemptive strike and always play it safe? And it was all those different themes. And the whole theme was, is it freedom and messy, or is it safe and bloody?
Well, I had a discussion with a friend one time about that same kind of theory about, the freedom versus control. And I said to him, basically, it probably drives you nuts to look at an ant colony, because there's no single ant that's telling them what to do, where to go, and how to build, and how to dig, and how to take care of the baby ants and all the larvae and all that. They just do it. And that's messy. If you're somebody who decides that you need to tell people they need to be good, and you need to make people be good, then free will sucks for you, because now you don't have that power. And so that's where I think the real struggle comes in. And that's why I like Cap's position is, Cap's position's a lot messier than Stark's. But the problem with Stark's is that's totalitarianism.
Yeah.
Whereas Cap's isn't.
Yeah. The individual, especially the innocent individual, suffers.
Right.
Yeah. And Cap's not willing to make that sacrifice.
Right. And your identity is subsumed within the Borg collective. Like, you don't exist as a human being. I mean, well, I don't want to get into it.
Well,
You don't want to get into it. Go back about a half hour if you don't want to get into
this
it.
was this definitely diverged from what I intended it for it to be, but it was still an interesting study into Marvel movies. But we have passed the hour mark, so it would surprise me. I didn't realize we had gotten so far. We are all boiling alive in this room, so I feel like we should wrap it up. Cole, do you feel like you got everything you wanted in there? Do you have any closing thoughts?
I don't know. I think that I don't want to be the guy that says it's not really that deep, but at the end of the day, I think that, and this kind of wraps it up for me, what the MCU was. It was more of the thing that was entertaining, and rather than giving you answers to the question, it makes you ask the question, you know? So when I watched it, I wasn't like, okay, well, that's the answer. Like, Captain America's right. I'm like, okay, here are these different viewpoints in these formative years of my life, and they're making me think about it. And then it led me to make a more informed decision and actually like think about it and try to arrive at that answer on my own.
That's a good way to look at it. And that's kind of how I do too. But we should wrap this up. Thank you everybody for listening. We love podcasting for you. Make sure you tell your friends about us because word of mouth is huge. You can also leave review, rating on iTunes. Listen to us anywhere podcasts are sold. You can find us at www.popcultureunboxing.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at Pop Culture Unboxing. You can find me at Matt Ross VO on Twitter.
You can find me at _leaf, LIEF.
Do you want to plug anything?
You can find me at anything at Cole Filer, Filer, just my name. Literally anything.
And you can find me on the Don Ross channel on YouTube. I currently have over 137 subscribers.
Oh, rolling deep.
Yeah. So you just check it out.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I hope you like Catholic masses. Because that's all that's on there.
And maybe podcasts in the future.
Maybe. Oh, yeah, there will be podcasts in the future. But we can talk about that later.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for listening.
All right. See you, everybody. Bye.
Have
I
fun.
love you.